They laughed when the quiet waitress said she witnessed something dangerous, called her dramatic, attention-seeking. Then a mafia boss walked through the door, bruised and bleeding, pointed directly at her and said, "She's the only reason I'm still alive." Turns out, the girl they mocked for being invisible had saved the most dangerous man in the city without even knowing his name. The night smelled like rust and rain. Aria's sneakers scraped against gravel as she took the shortcut under the old industrial bridge. Her shift at the diner had run 2 hours late, again, and the bus wouldn't come for another 40 minutes. Walking was faster. She pulled her jacket tighter. The overpass loomed ahead, its concrete pillars dark against the cloudy sky. No streetlights worked here anymore. The city had forgotten this part of town years ago. Then she heard the engines. 3 black cars rolled in from the opposite side of the bridge, headlights cutting through the darkness. They stopped in a triangle formation, boxing in a 4th car, a sleek sedan that sat alone in the center. Aria froze behind a stack of old construction equipment. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Just wait. They'll leave. Just wait. Car doors opened. Men stepped out, 6, 7, maybe 8, all wearing dark suits, all moving with the kind of precision that made her stomach drop. One man emerged from the center sedan. Tall, broad shoulders. Even from 50 feet away, Aria could see the way the others watched him. Not with friendship, with calculation. Luca, one of the men, spoke, his voice carrying across the empty space. "We need to talk about the shipment." The tall man, Luca, didn't move. At midnight? Under a bridge. Neutral ground. There's no such thing. The first gunshot cracked the air like a whip. Aria dropped to her knees, hands flying to her ears. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. Luca dove behind the nearest concrete pillar as bullets tore through the sedan behind him. Glass exploded. Metal shrieked. The men fanned out, cutting off every angle of escape. "You really thought we'd let you consolidate the families?" one of them shouted. "Your father's empire dies with you tonight." Luca returned fire. 3 quick shots that sent 2 men scrambling for cover. But Aria could see what he couldn't from his position. More cars approaching from the far side of the bridge. Reinforcements. He was trapped. Her hands shook as she pressed herself against the rusted equipment. Call the police. Call someone. Do something. But her phone was dead. Had been since this morning. Another volley of gunfire. Luca was pinned behind the pillar, surrounded on 3 sides. The men were closing in, taking their time now. They knew he had nowhere to go. Aria's eyes darted around the darkness, searching for, she didn't even know what. An exit. A weapon. Anything. That's when she saw it. 20 feet to her left, an old construction fence leaned against the overpass supports. Chain link and metal posts, held up by a single rusted bolt that looked ready to snap. The fence towered at least 12 feet high, heavy enough to make noise. Lots of noise. Her mind raced. Distraction. Just for a second. That's all he needs. Before she could talk herself out of it, Aria was moving. She stayed low, using the shadows and abandoned equipment as cover. Her pulse roared in her ears. 10 feet. 5 feet. She reached the fence and gripped the bottom edge. The metal was cold and sharp against her palms. "This is insane. You're just a waitress. You serve coffee and eggs. You don't." Another gunshot. Aria kicked the support bolt with everything she had. The fence groaned, then collapsed with a deafening crash of metal against concrete. The sound exploded through the underpass like a car accident, echoing off the pillars and road above. Every man whipped around toward the noise. For one heartbeat, everyone froze. Luca didn't waste it. He broke from cover and sprinted toward the ravine at the edge of the bridge, the side no one was watching because it dropped 30 feet into thick woods. The men shouted and fired, but their shots went wide, their focus still split by the fence collapse. Luca reached the edge and jumped. Aria's breath caught. She heard branches cracking, a heavy thud, then nothing. Find him, one of the men roared. Check the ravine. Move. 4 men rushed to the edge, flashlights sweeping the darkness below. Arya didn't wait to see if they'd spot him. She turned and ran. Her sneakers slapped against pavement as she bolted back the way she'd come, staying in the shadows, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. Behind her, men were shouting, arguing about whether anyone could have survived that fall. She didn't stop running until she reached the main road, 3 blocks away. A late-night bus was just pulling up to the stop. Arya stumbled aboard, her hands still shaking as she dropped coins into the slot. The driver gave her a concerned look. "You okay, miss?" Arya nodded, not trusting her voice. She collapsed into a seat near the back and stared out the window as the bus pulled away. The overpass disappeared behind buildings and streetlights. What did I just do? Her reflection stared back at her from the dark glass, wide-eyed, pale, ordinary. Just a tired waitress in a worn jacket, heading home after a long shift. No one would ever know. She'd kicked a fence, made some noise. That was all. The man, Luca, he'd gotten away on his own. He was probably fine. Or maybe he wasn't. Either way, it had nothing to do with her. Arya closed her eyes and tried to slow her breathing. By the time the bus reached her stop, she'd almost convinced herself it had been a bad dream. Almost. Arya's alarm screamed at 6 a.m. She slapped it off and stared at the ceiling, her body heavy with exhaustion. Every time she closed her eyes last night, she saw muzzle flashes and heard that fence crashing down.
Just a bad shift.
Just a weird night. Forget about it. She dragged herself out of bed and got ready for work. The Silver Spoon Diner sat on the corner of 5th and Madison, its chrome exterior gleaming in the morning sun. The breakfast rush was already building when Arya pushed through the back door at 7:15. "Look who decided to show up," Rachel said from behind the counter. She was the head waitress, pretty, sharp-tongued, and never missed a chance to remind everyone that she'd been there 5 years longer than anyone else. "I'm on time," Arya said quietly, tying her apron. Barely, Rachel smirked. "You look like death, by the way. Rough night." Arya opened her mouth, then closed it. "I saw a man almost get murdered under a bridge, and I might have saved his life." "Just tired," she said instead. "You're always tired," this came from Marcus, one of the line cooks. He flipped an omelet without looking up. "What do you do at night that's got you dragging in here like a zombie every morning?" "Sleep," Arya said. "Or try to." Rachel laughed.
Right.
The mysterious Arya. So quiet. So boring. The manager, Phil, poked his head out of his office.
Arya.
"Table 6 needs coffee. Stop standing around." She grabbed the pot and headed to the dining room, ignoring Rachel's snicker behind her. The morning crawled by in a blur of orders and complaints. Arya moved on autopilot, pouring coffee, delivering plates, clearing tables. But her mind kept drifting back to the overpass. Did he survive the fall? Did they find him? She fumbled a plate, nearly dropping it. The customer glared at her. "Sorry," she whispered. By 10 o'clock, she couldn't take it anymore. Arya found Phil in his office, doing paperwork with a cigarette dangling from his mouth despite the no smoking sign on the wall. "Phil, I need to tell you something." He didn't look up. "If you're asking for a raise again, the answer's still no." "No, I saw something last night. Something dangerous." That got his attention. He glanced up, eyebrows raised. "Dangerous how?" There were these men and guns and she struggled to find words that wouldn't sound insane. "I think someone might have been hurt. Or killed. Under the old industrial bridge." Phil stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. "Arya, honey, you watch too much TV." "I'm serious." "Look," he set down his pen. "This is a rough neighborhood. Sometimes people do rough things. But unless you saw someone actually die, there's nothing to report. And even if you did, you don't want to get involved in that kind of business. Trust me." "But did you see a body?" "No, but..." Then there's no problem, he picked up his pen again. Get back to work. Table 9 needs their check. Arya stood there for another second, frustration burning in her chest. Then she turned and walked out. Rachel was waiting by the coffee station, grinning. Let me guess, Phil didn't believe your dramatic story? You were listening? Sweetie, everyone heard you. Rachel leaned in conspiratorially. Here's some advice. If you want people to take you seriously, stop being so weird and jumpy all the time. Nobody trusts the quiet girl who acts like she's got secrets. Arya's jaw tightened. I don't have secrets. Sure you don't, Rachel grabbed 2 plates from the window. Just stop being so paranoid. It's exhausting to watch. The lunch shift was worse. Marcus made jokes about Arya seeing things another waitress, Jen, asked loudly if Arya was okay mentally. Maybe she needed to see someone. Even the busboy, a teenager who barely spoke English, gave her pitying looks. By 2 o'clock, Arya wanted to disappear. She was clearing a booth when she overheard 2 customers talking at the counter. Did you see the news? One of them said. That mobster, Luca Moretti, they're saying he's dead. Arya's hands froze on the dishes. About time, the other customer replied. Guy thought he owned this city. His enemies finally got smart. They found his car all shot up under some bridge. No body though. Probably in the river by now. Arya felt the blood drain from her face.
Luca Moretti.
That was his name. She knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name. The youngest head of the Moretti family, the man who'd taken over after his father died 3 years ago. Ruthless. Powerful. Untouchable. Or so everyone thought. Rachel appeared beside her. You gonna stand there all day, or actually work? Arya barely heard her. Her mind was racing. They think he's dead. But I saw him jump. I saw him run. Earth to Arya. Rachel snapped her fingers in front of Arya's face. Seriously, what is wrong with you today? Nothing, Arya whispered. But as she carried the dishes to the kitchen, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd saved a Mafia boss's life. And no one, not Phil, not Rachel, not anyone, would ever believe her. Luca Moretti woke to the smell of pine and antiseptic. His ribs screamed as he tried to sit up. A hand pressed firmly against his shoulder, pushing him back down. Easy, boss, it was Vincent, his head of security. The man's weathered face showed relief, mixed with exhaustion. You've got 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and more bruises than I can count. Luca blinked, taking in his surroundings. Wood-paneled walls. A single window showing dense forest. The safe house, the one only 3 people knew about. How long? His voice came out rough. 18 hours. We pulled you out of the ravine at dawn. Vincent poured water into a glass. You're lucky you landed in the creek. Broke your fall. Luca took the water, his mind already moving past the pain. The ambush. It was Carmine. We figured. His men have been celebrating all morning, spreading word that you're dead. Vincent's expression darkened. Half the organization thinks you're gone. The other half is waiting to see who takes power. Let them think I'm dead. For now, Luca drained the glass. We need to find out who else was involved. Carmine couldn't have planned this alone. Already working on it, Vincent hesitated. Boss, there's something you should know. About how you got away. Luca's hand went still on the glass. The memory hit him like a punch. The fence crashing down. That deafening metal-on-concrete sound that had given him exactly 3 seconds to run. He'd thought it was wind at first, or maybe divine intervention. Someone was there, Luca said slowly. Someone helped me. Had to be. That fence didn't fall on its own. Vincent pulled out his phone, swiping through photos. I went back this morning with 2 men. Searched the area before the cops cordoned it off. He held up the phone. The image showed a crumpled piece of paper, smudged with dirt. Found this 20 feet from where the fence fell. Someone dropped it running away. Luca took the phone, zooming in on the paper. It was an order slip, the kind waitresses used to take down customer requests. Table 8. 2 eggs scrambled. Bacon crispy.
Toast no butter.
Coffee black. At the top, printed in faded blue ink, Silver Spoon Diner, 5th and Madison. A waitress, Luca said quietly. Looks that way. Unless someone just had the paper in their pocket, Vincent shrugged. Could be nothing. But Luca's instincts said otherwise. He remembered that moment under the bridge, the split second before the fence fell. He'd been trapped, calculating his odds of survival.
0.
Maybe 1% if he was lucky. Then that crash. That perfectly timed distraction. And something else. A flash of movement in his peripheral vision. Not one of Carmine's men. Someone smaller, faster. Someone who'd disappeared into the shadows before he could focus. It's not nothing, Luca said. Whoever dropped this saved my life. Vincent frowned. You think some random waitress kicked down a fence to help you? I think someone saw what was happening and made a choice. Luca swung his legs off the cot, ignoring the spike of pain through his side. Carmine's men were professionals. They wouldn't have gotten distracted by an accident. That fence fell because someone made it fall. Boss, you need to rest. I need to find out who helped me, Luca stood, steadying himself against the wall. Before Carmine figures out I'm alive and starts tying up loose ends. If this person saw something, if they can identify anyone, they're a liability, Vincent finished grimly.
Exactly.
Luca's jaw tightened. He didn't like involving civilians. It complicated things. But if someone had witnessed the ambush and saved his life, they were already involved whether he liked it or not. And if they could identify even one of the traitors in his organization, it might be the edge he needed. The Silver Spoon Diner, Luca said. 5th and Madison. You can't be serious, Vincent stared at him. You want to walk into a public diner while half the city thinks you're dead? I want to find the person who saved me before Carmine does. Luca grabbed a clean shirt from the closet, moving carefully to avoid aggravating his ribs. Besides, I'm dead, remember? No one will be looking for a ghost. Vincent muttered something in Italian that definitely wasn't complimentary, but he pulled out his phone. I'll have Marco bring the car around. And boss? If we're doing this, you're wearing a vest.
Non negoziabile. Fine.
20 minutes later, Luca studied his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The bruise on his jaw was ugly, but not unusual for his line of work. The cut above his eyebrow had been butterfly bandaged. He looked rough, but not dead. Good enough. Vincent appeared in the doorway. Car's ready, but I'm coming with you. I know. And if this goes sideways. It won't. Vincent didn't look convinced, but he followed Luca outside. 3 black SUVs waited in the clearing, engines running. Overkill for a diner visit, but Luca wasn't taking chances. Not after last night. As they drove toward the city, Luca stared out the window at the passing trees. Somewhere in that diner was the person who'd saved his life. Someone who'd seen him at his most vulnerable and chosen to help anyway.
He needed to know why.
And more importantly, he needed to know what they'd seen. The lunch rush was finally slowing down when the SUVs arrived. Aria was wiping down table 12 when she heard the engines. Deep, rumbling, expensive. The kind of sound that made everyone in the diner look up. 3 black vehicles parked in a row outside. Perfectly aligned. Perfectly ominous. Rachel dropped the coffee pot she was holding. It shattered across the tile floor. Oh my God, someone whispered. The front door opened. 6 men entered first, spreading out along the walls with the practiced efficiency of a security detail. They wore dark suits and sunglasses despite being indoors. None of them smiled. Then he walked in. Aria's breath caught in her throat.
Luca Moretti.
He looked different in daylight, taller than she'd thought, with sharp features and dark eyes that swept the diner like he was cataloging every face, every exit, every potential threat. A white bandage cut across his left eyebrow. His jaw was mottled with a deep purple bruise. But he was alive. Very much alive. The diner had gone completely silent. Every customer, every staff member, frozen in place. Luca's gaze moved methodically across the room. Past Phil, who'd emerged from his office with his mouth hanging open. Past Rachel, who looked like she might faint. Past Marcus, who'd stopped mid-flip with a spatula in his hand. Then his eyes found Arya.
And stopped.
She stood next to table 12, the cleaning rag still clutched in her hand, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Luca walked toward her. Every step was deliberate, controlled. The room seemed to shrink around him, his presence filling the space like a physical force. He stopped 3 feet away. "You," he said quietly. "You saved me last night. It wasn't a question." Arya's mouth went dry. She could feel every eye in the diner boring into her. Rachel's shocked expression. Phil's confusion. The customer's fear and curiosity mixed together. I don't know what you." The overpass. The fence, Luca's voice was calm, but there was an intensity behind it that made her knees weak. "You were there." Arya swallowed hard. Lying seemed pointless. He already knew. "I just made some noise," she whispered. "That's all. That's all." A ghost of a smile touched Luca's mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You saved my life." "I kicked a fence," Arya said, her voice barely audible. "I didn't even know if it would. I just thought maybe." "You thought maybe it would give me a chance," Luca nodded slowly. "And it did." Rachel found her voice.
Arya.
She sounded strangled. "You know who this is?" "I'm starting to figure it out," Arya said faintly. Phil stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Mr. Moretti, sir, I apologize if one of my staff caused you any trouble." "Trouble?" Luca turned to look at Phil, and the manager actually took a step back. "Your waitress saw 8 men trying to kill me, and instead of running away, she created a distraction that saved my life. The only trouble is that I didn't get to thank her properly." He looked back at Arya. "You saw what happened. You saw their faces." It wasn't a question this time either, but Arya nodded anyway.
"Some of them."
It was dark, but she hesitated, remembering. "I saw enough." "Did you tell anyone?" Arya glanced at Phil, who'd gone pale. "I tried. No one believed me." "Of course they didn't," Luca said softly. "Because you're just the quiet girl who no one takes seriously." The words stung because they were true. Arya felt her cheeks burn. One of Luca's men, the older one with the weathered face, stepped closer and murmured something in his ear. Luca listened, then nodded. "Someone in my organization betrayed me last night," Luca said, his voice carrying through the silent diner. "They set up that ambush. They wanted me dead. And they would have succeeded if not for her." He gestured to Arya, and she wanted to disappear into the floor. "The men who tried to kill me are still out there," Luca continued. "Some of them are people I trusted, people who've worked for me for years. I need to find them before they realize I'm alive and try again." "What does that have to do with Arya?" Rachel asked, her voice pitched high with fear. Luca's expression hardened. "She's a witness. She saw what happened. She might be able to identify the traitors." He paused. "Which also means they might come looking for her." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Arya felt the blood drain from her face. "They don't know I was there. I ran before anyone saw me." "You dropped this." Luca pulled something from his pocket. "An order slip."
Her handwriting.
"We found it 20 feet from where the fence fell. If my men found it, Carmine's men might find other evidence that someone was there. A footprint. A witness who saw you running. Something." Arya's hands started to shake. "I'm not trying to frighten you," Luca said, his voice gentler now. "But I need you to understand the situation. You saved my life. Now I'm going to return the favor." "By doing what?"
Arya whispered.
"By keeping you alive long enough to help me find the people who betrayed me," Luca extended his hand. "And then making sure they never threaten either of us again." Arya stared at his outstretched hand. Behind her, Rachel made a small, terrified sound. Phil was speechless. The entire diner held its breath. Arya looked up into Luca Moretti's dark eyes and realized she didn't actually have a choice. She'd stopped being invisible the moment she kicked that fence. Slowly, She reached out and took his hand. The drive to Luca's office felt surreal. Arya sat in the back of the SUV between Vincent, the weathered man who turned out to be Luca's head of security, and another guard who hadn't spoken a single word. Luca sat in the front passenger seat, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. She'd left the diner in a daze. Phil had stammered something about her taking the rest of the day off. Rachel had stared like Arya had grown a second head. No one had tried to stop her. What could they say? When a mafia boss asks you to come with him, you don't argue. You okay? Vincent asked quietly. Arya realized her hands were clenched in her lap, knuckles white. I serve breakfast for a living. This is not that. Vincent's mouth twitched. You'll be fine. Boss doesn't hurt civilians, especially ones who save his life.
Comforting. Arya muttered.
The office was downtown, tucked into a building that looked legitimate from the outside. Glass and steel, professional. The elevator required a key card and took them to the top floor. Luca's private office was nothing like she'd expected. No dark wood paneling or intimidating decor. Just clean lines, modern furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He gestured to a leather chair.
Sit. Arya sat.
Luca moved to his desk, touching something on his computer. A large screen descended from the ceiling, flickering to life. Vincent closed the blinds and dimmed the lights. What you're about to see is surveillance footage from various locations around the ambush site, Luca said. Gas stations, convenience stores, traffic cameras. We've been collecting it all morning. You hack traffic cameras? Arya asked before she could stop herself. I prefer accessed. Luca's tone was dry. Watch carefully. Tell me if you recognize anyone. The first video played grainy footage from a gas station 2 blocks from the overpass. Cars came and went. Nothing unusual. The second showed the convenience store across from the bridge. Arya leaned forward, studying each person who entered or left. Then she saw him. Wait, stop. Go back. Luca froze the frame. A man stood near the store entrance, his back to the camera, phone pressed to his ear. He wore a dark jacket and jeans. Nothing remarkable except
His watch, Arya said.
I saw that watch.
Luca zoomed in.
The watch was distinctive, gold with a thick band, expensive looking. You're sure? Arya nodded slowly, the memory sharpening. When I was hiding behind the construction equipment, before the shooting started, I saw someone standing near the overpass entrance. He was on his phone, and his sleeve rode up. That watch caught the light from the street lamp. I remember thinking it looked too nice for that neighborhood. Vincent and Luca exchanged glances. Can you see his face in any other frames? Vincent asked. Luca scrubbed through the footage. Finally, the man turned slightly, just enough for the camera to catch his profile. Luca went completely still. That's Marco Santini, he said quietly. He's been with my family for 12 years. Drove my father to his chemotherapy appointments. I trusted him. The past tense hung heavy in the air. Arya's chest tightened.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. Luca's voice was cold now, empty of emotion. Keep watching. They went through more footage. Arya's eyes started to hurt from staring at the screen, but she forced herself to focus. These men had tried to kill Luca. If they knew she'd been there, they might try to kill her too. The fourth video showed the overpass itself from a distance, a traffic camera mounted on the adjacent street. Arya watched the black cars arrive, the figures moving into position. There, she said suddenly. That one. The man walking past the sedan. Luca froze the frame again. He's the one who spoke first, Arya said, her voice stronger now. I heard him say something about neutral ground. He was the one giving orders before the shooting started. Luca's jaw clenched. That's Dominic Russo. Carmine's nephew. He turned to Vincent. I knew Carmine was involved, but having confirmation that Dominic was there personally, it means Carmine's committed. Vincent finished grimly. He sent family. They continued through the footage. Arya identified 2 more men she'd seen, one standing guard near the ravine, another checking his phone before the ambush began. By the time they finished, Luca had a list of 6 names written on a whiteboard. 3 confirmed traitors, 3 more suspects. You have a good memory, Luca said, studying her. I'm used to remembering things, Arya said quietly. At the diner, you have to memorize orders, faces, who tips well, who doesn't. You learn to pay attention. You're more than that, Luca turned to face her fully. Most people would have panicked, run away. But you stayed calm enough to notice details. Details that just gave me the names of every traitor in my organization.
Arya shifted uncomfortably.
I was terrified. Fear and observation aren't mutually exclusive. Luca pulled up a chair and sat across from her. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Why did you help me? You didn't know who I was. You saw men with guns trying to kill someone. The smart move would have been to run. Arya was quiet for a moment, trying to put it into words. You were outnumbered, she finally said. It wasn't fair.
And I
couldn't just watch someone die when maybe I could do something. Even something small. Lucas stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, Arya admitted. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucas smiled. A real smile that softened the hard lines of his face. Vincent, he said, not taking his eyes off Arya. Set up protective detail. And get me everything we have on Marco Santini's current location. Vincent nodded. What's the play? Luca's smile faded, replaced by something darker. We're going hunting. Night fell over the city, like a curtain. Arya sat in the surveillance van, surrounded by monitors and equipment that looked like something out of a spy movie. Vincent was beside her, headset on, coordinating with the teams outside. You didn't have to bring me, Arya said for the 3rd time. Boss's orders, Vincent replied without looking away from the screens. He wants you where he can see you. Safer that way. Through the window, Arya could see the warehouse district stretched out along the waterfront, rows of aging buildings and shipping containers, lit by harsh sodium lights. Marco Santini ran a legitimate import business out of one of these warehouses. At least, that's what the paperwork said. Are you going to kill him? Arya asked quietly. Vincent's expression didn't change. We're going to have a conversation. What happens after that depends on Marco. Not exactly reassuring. One of the monitors showed Luca and 4 men approaching the warehouse from the east entrance. They moved like shadows, silent and coordinated. Another monitor displayed the building's interior, grainy thermal imaging that showed 3 figures inside. 1 in the office upstairs, 2 on the ground floor. Boss, you've got 2 guards on the main floor, Vincent said into his headset. 1 northwest corner, 1 by the loading dock. Luca's voice crackled through the speaker. Confirmed. We're moving in. Arya leaned forward, her heart racing despite being half a mile away from the actual danger. The thermal images showed Luca's team entering through a side door. They split up, 2 men heading toward the guards, 2 following Luca toward the stairs. Wait, Arya said suddenly. Vincent glanced at her. What? She pointed at one of the monitors showing the building's exterior from a different angle. That camera, the one mounted on the east corner. It's pointed at the side door they just used. Vincent swore under his breath. Boss, you've got a camera on your entry point. We know. Luca's voice came back calm. Already disabled it. But good catch. Arya studied the other monitors, her eyes moving across different angles of the building. Something felt wrong. There, she pointed at the thermal display. The office where Marco is, there's something behind that wall. Another heat signature. Vincent zoomed in. She was right. A 4th figure, partially obscured by what looked like a false wall. Boss, you've got another person in the office, Vincent said sharply. Hidden behind the back wall. Possible backup.
Copy that.
On the screens, Luca's team moved with renewed caution. The 2 guards on the ground floor were neutralized quietly. Arya couldn't see exactly how, and wasn't sure she wanted to. Luca reached the office door. He didn't knock. Just pushed it open and walked in like he owned the place. The audio feed clicked on. Marco. Luca's voice was eerily calm. Been a while.
Luca?
Marco's voice cracked with shock. They said you were dead? I was supposed to be footsteps across the floor. But plans change. Someone helped me. Someone who saw everything. Silence. I don't know what you're talking about. The watch you're wearing. Gold, distinctive band. You were at the overpass 20 minutes before the ambush. On your phone. Reporting my location. That's crazy. There's a man hiding behind your back wall, Luca interrupted. Tell him to come out, or I'll drag him out. A long pause. Then shuffling sounds. A second man emerged, hands raised. On the thermal monitor, Arya watched him step into view. Arya, Vincent said quietly. Can you see the second monitor, the one showing the office window? She shifted her focus. The window showed a partial view of the office interior. The man who'd been hiding was younger, nervous-looking. I don't recognize him, Arya said. That's Tommy Vasquez. Marco's nephew. Vincent's expression darkened. Just a kid. 19-inch. On the audio feed, Luca was speaking. I'm going to ask you both one time. Who else knew? How many people inside my organization betrayed me? Luca, please. Marco's voice shook. Carmine said he just wanted to talk to you, work things out. With 8 armed men under a bridge at midnight. I didn't know. I swear I thought it was just a meeting. You gave them my location. You helped them set the ambush. Luca's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. You've known me since I was 16 years old, Marco. You knew my father. And you sold me out. Carmine has my sister. Marco's voice broke. He said if I didn't help, he'd kill her. What was I supposed to do? Arya's breath caught. She looked at Vincent. He was being blackmailed. Vincent's jaw was tight. Doesn't matter. He still betrayed the family. But on the screen, Luca had gone very still. Where's your sister now? He asked. I don't know. Carmine moved her 3 days ago. I swear, Luca, I never wanted. The others. Luca cut him off. Give me names. Everyone who helped Carmine.
Marco talked.
For 10 minutes, he talked, and Vincent's fingers flew across the keyboard, typing everything. When Marco finished, Luca was quiet for a long moment. Tommy, he finally said. Come here. The younger man approached hesitantly. You knew about this? And no, sir. I just help Uncle Marco with the books. I don't. Vincent, Luca said into his calm, send a team to find Marco's sister. Use whatever resources necessary. Vincent looked surprised but nodded. Copy that. Marco, you and Tommy are going to a safe house, Luca continued. You'll stay there until this is finished. If you're telling the truth about being blackmailed, we'll discuss consequences later. If you're lying. He didn't finish the sentence. Arya realized she'd been holding her breath. Boss, Vincent said. That's twice now Arya's caught something we missed. The camera, the hidden person. I know, Luca's voice came back. Which is exactly why she's staying with us. The teams regrouped outside. Arya watched on the monitors as Marco and Tommy were escorted to a different vehicle, their heads down.
No gunfire.
No violence. Just information extracted and a problem neutralized. 20 minutes later, Luca climbed into the van. His eyes met Arya's. You have good instincts, he said simply. Arya didn't know what to say to that. 1 down, Vincent said. 5 to go. Luca nodded, his expression grim. Then we keep moving. The break came at 4 in the morning. Arya had dozed off in a chair in Luca's office, exhausted from the night's events. She woke to Vincent shaking her shoulder gently. We found him, he said. Carmine. She sat up, disoriented. Luca stood by the window, phone in hand, his expression carved from stone. Where? He asked whoever was on the line. A pause. You're certain?
Good.
Keep eyes on him, but don't engage. I'm on my way. He hung up and turned to Vincent. Carmine's trying to leave the city. He knows I'm alive.
How?
Vincent demanded. Marco probably had a backup signal. Or someone else tipped him off. Luca grabbed his jacket. Doesn't matter. He's at a private airstrip near the quarry, trying to get a plane fueled and ready. The quarry's exposed, Vincent said. Open ground, limited cover. If he's got men with him. He does. At least 6-inch. Luca's jaw tightened. But we have something he doesn't. What's that? We know he's coming. Arya stood up, her legs unsteady. You're going after him now. Before he gets on that plane, Luca looked at her. You should stay here. No, the word came out firmer than she expected. I've come this far. And she hesitated. I might see something. Like before. Luca studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Vincent, bring her. But she stays in the command vehicle.
Non negotiable.
20 minutes later, they were racing through the pre-dawn darkness toward the quarry. Arya sat in the surveillance van again, but this time the atmosphere was different. Tense.
Deadly.
Command vehicle has visual on the airstrip, one of Vincent's men reported. Target is near the hangar. 7 hostiles. Armed. The monitors showed thermal imaging of the small airstrip carved into the quarry's edge. The hangar sat at one end, a small plane visible on the tarmac. Figures moved around it, refueling, loading cargo. Preparing to run. Boss, you want us to block the runway? Vincent asked. Not yet. Luca's voice was thoughtful. If we corner them at the hangar, they'll use the plane for cover. We need to draw them out. Arya leaned forward, studying the layout. The quarry was a huge pit, with the airstrip built on a flat ledge above it. Steep rock walls on 3 sides, open air on the 4th. Only one road in and out. They're trapped, she said quietly. They don't know that yet, Vincent replied. On the monitor, she watched Luca's convoy approach from the access road, but slowly, headlights off. They stopped about 300 yards from the hangar, using the natural curves of the terrain as cover. He's got guards posted, Arya said, pointing at the thermal display. 2 by the hangar entrance, 1 near the fuel truck, 1. Wait. She squinted at the screen. There's someone on top of the hangar. Sniper position. Vincent swore and relayed the information. Boss, you've got a shooter on the roof. Already spotted him. Luca responded calmly. Marco, take him out. On a different monitor, Arya watched one of Luca's men, Marco, apparently a different Marco, move into position with a rifle. 3 seconds later, the thermal signature on the roof went dark. Target down, Marco's voice confirmed. The remaining guards near the hangar looked around, confused by the sudden radio silence from their sniper. Now they know we're here, Vincent muttered. Carmine's voice suddenly boomed across the quarry, amplified by a loudspeaker.
Luca.
I know you're out there. We can talk about this. Luca stepped out from behind one of the vehicles, completely exposed. Arya's heart jumped into her throat. What is he doing? Making a point, Vincent said grimly. There's nothing to talk about, Carmine. Luca's voice carried across the open space. You tried to kill me. You failed. Now you pay. Gunfire erupted from the hangar. Luca was already moving, diving behind a concrete barrier as bullets sparked off the ground where he'd been standing. All teams engage, Vincent ordered. Chaos exploded across the monitors. Luca's men moved in coordinated waves, using the quarry's terrain for cover. Carmine's guards fired back, but they were pinned at the hangar with nowhere to retreat. Arya's eyes darted across the screens, trying to track everything at once. Then she saw it. Wait, that fuel truck, she pointed at one of the monitors. Is it still full? Vincent looked. Should be. Why? Because there's a man circling around behind your team. She traced the movement on the thermal display. If he gets to that truck and sets it off near Luca's position. Vincent didn't wait. Boss. Hostile flanking south side, heading for the fuel truck. On it. 2 of Luca's men peeled off, intercepting the flanking guard before he reached the truck. A brief struggle, then the threat was neutralized. Good eye, Vincent said to Arya. The firefight lasted another 3 minutes. Then suddenly it was over. Carmine's remaining men threw down their weapons, hands raised. Luca walked forward slowly, deliberately. His men moved in, securing the surrendering guards. Carmine himself stood near the plane, his expensive suit rumpled, his face pale in the growing dawn light. "You destroyed my father's legacy," Luca said, his voice cold and clear through the audio feed. "You turned my own people against me. You held Marco's sister hostage to force his betrayal. Business, Luca. Just business. You made it personal when you tried to kill me." Luca pulled something from his pocket. A phone. He held it up so Carmine could see the screen. "This has every name you gave Marco. Every transaction. Every betrayal. The families will know what you did. What you tried to do." Carmine's face crumbled. In their world, that information was a death sentence worse than any bullet. "Please. You're done, Carmine." Luca turned and walked away, leaving his men to secure the prisoners. In the van, Arya released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. It was over. The sun was setting when Luca's SUV pulled up outside the Silver Spoon Diner. Arya had slept most of the day in a guest room at Luca's building. Actual sleep, deep and dreamless, the kind that came after 3 days of adrenaline finally wore off. When she woke, Vincent had told her Carmine and his men were in federal custody, the traitors identified, and the organization secure. "Boss wants to take you home," Vincent had said. But first, apparently, they had a stop to make. "You didn't have to do this," Arya said as the SUV idled outside the diner. Luca adjusted his jacket. The bruise on his jaw had faded to yellow, the bandage above his eyebrow removed. He looked less like a man who'd survived an assassination attempt and more like what he was, someone powerful who'd just reminded everyone why. "Yes, I did," he said simply. "Come on." They walked into the diner together. The dinner shift was in full swing. The same customers, the same clatter of dishes, the same smell of coffee and grease. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. Then every head turned. Rachel stood frozen by the coffee station, a pot in her hand. Marcus peered out from the kitchen window, his mouth slightly open. Phil emerged from his office, his expression caught between terror and confusion. The customers went silent, forks halfway to mouths. Luca walked to the center of the dining room, and Arya had no choice but to follow. Every eye in the place tracked their movement. "Afternoon," Luca said pleasantly, like he was just another customer. "I'm looking for your manager." Phil approached slowly, wiping his hands on his apron. That's me, sir." "Your waitress," Luca gestured to Arya. "How long has she worked here?"
Arya?
"About 2 years." "And in those 2 years, has she ever called in sick? Missed a shift? Caused any problems?" Phil blinked, confused.
"No, sir. She's
Reliable. Quiet, but reliable." "Quiet," Luca repeated, a slight edge to his voice. "The same quiet girl who tried to tell you she witnessed something dangerous 3 days ago." Phil's face went pale. I thought she was being dramatic?" Luca's tone could have cut glass. "Overreacting? Seeing things?" "Sir, I didn't." "She saved my life." Luca's words dropped into the silence like stones into water. 3 nights ago, 8 men tried to kill me under the industrial overpass. They had me cornered. I had no way out. And this quiet, reliable waitress you thought was being dramatic created a distraction that gave me exactly 3 seconds to escape. Rachel's coffee pot slipped from her fingers. This time it didn't shatter. Marcus had somehow appeared and caught it, his eyes never leaving Luca. "Without her," Luca continued, "I would be dead." But she didn't stop there. She helped me identify every single person who betrayed me. She spotted threats my own security missed. She has instincts and observation skills that saved my life multiple times over the past 3 days. He turned to face Arya fully, and for the first time since she'd met him, his expression softened. "You saw someone in trouble and helped without thinking about the cost. You stayed calm when most people would have panicked. You're brave, intelligent, and observant. He paused. Everything I look for in people I trust. Arya felt her cheeks burning. I did what anyone would. No, Luca's voice was firm. Most people would have run. You didn't. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is a finder's fee. For services rendered, he handed it to her. It's enough to cover 6 months of expenses. Maybe a year, if you're careful. Arya took the envelope with shaking hands. She could feel its weight. I don't expect you to keep working here, Luca continued, his voice carrying through the silent diner. But if you want to, that's your choice. However, I'm also offering you a position in my organization. Nothing illegal. I have legitimate businesses that need smart, observant people. Security consulting. Asset management. The pay is better, the hours are flexible, and you'll never be mocked for being quiet again. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. Take a few days. Think about it. Call that number when you decide. Arya stared at the card. Heavy stock, simple printing. A phone number and nothing else. And Arya? Luca's tone shifted, becoming almost gentle. Whatever you choose, you have my protection. Anyone who tries to hurt you answers to me. Understood. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Luca turned to address the rest of the diner. This woman is under my personal protection. Spread the word. He looked at Phil. Treat your employees better. You never know who they might turn out to be. Then he looked at Rachel, who'd gone completely white. He didn't say anything, just held her gaze for a long, uncomfortable moment. Rachel looked away first. Luca turned back to Arya one last time. Thank you. For everything. He extended his hand. Arya shook it, feeling the strength and certainty in his grip. Then Luca Moretti walked out of the Silver Spoon Diner, his men following like shadows. The SUVs pulled away, disappearing into the evening traffic. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then the diner exploded into whispered chaos. Arya stood in the center of it all, the envelope in one hand, the business card in the other. Rachel approached slowly, her earlier confidence completely gone.
Arya, I'm sorry.
I didn't. I know, Arya said quietly. Phil cleared his throat. If you want to stay, you can take as much time off as you need. I'll let you know, Arya said. She walked to the back room, untied her apron, and hung it on its hook. The girl who'd been invisible for 2 years picked up her bag and walked out the front door. Behind her, the staff and customers watched in stunned silence. The quiet waitress was quiet no more.